Good day, everybody. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another What's This Then? Today we are having a... Well, normally this is the part where I would say we're having a first impressions look at the video game in question, but this one's a little bit different, as I have beaten this game. I sat down to play it, and 2 hours later, it was done. So, this isn't really so much a first impressions as it is a review. The format's going to be pretty much the same. I'm not going to be discussing anything that really happens in the story, other than just sort of giving an overall thoughts on it. But yeah, I didn't know this game was this short, but it hasn't really impacted my thoughts on it at all. I still had a really good time with it, just to give you a quick look into where we're going to be going with this one. But yeah, today we're having a look at Hypogea, which is a atmospheric third-person platformer with a smidge sprinkling of a bit of puzzling in there. Nothing too crazy, just something to keep it fresh. Now, on Steam it says this is developed by a fellow called Charlie Wagner, and published, self-published as well. It is not a solo dev effort, however, just the credits are seen at the end. There's quite a few people that made contributions, different sound effects, different parts of the music, etc., etc. So, but certainly a very small team, a very small group of people came together for the creation of this game, and I believe Charlie Wagner was really the sole dev of the game, the one who really had the creative vision and really put the majority of this together. But I would just always like to put that out there, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff out there in video games, especially with Expedition 33, a lot of people thinking that, literally only, 30 people or whatever made that game, and it's, contractors just don't quite get the credit they should for a lot of this stuff, so I like to point it out sometimes when I can. Now, this one came out on the 9th of November, so I'm a smidge late getting around to it, but you can thank Outer Worlds 2 really for that one, because it really did take up a good bit of my time recently, and I'm still not done with it. But yeah, like I said, only 2 hours I spent on this one, and I'm done. Now, I haven't, done everything there is to do. There are some, collectibles, a few hidden things here and there, so you could maybe squeeze about 3 hours out of it. Maybe a little bit more, if you're willing to go back and find everything. They're not terribly hard to find, which is why I say only maybe about another hour and you'd have them. But, let's actually... Well, this is normally the part where I would go through, the settings menu and stuff, but this is the sort of game where there's just really not a whole lot in here, so you got, your max frame rate, your VSync, you got a field of view, which is always nice. There is, a little display timer for speedrunning purposes, and there is a pixel filter to give it that really retro look, which is weird to say about PS2 games, but that's just how time works. I tried it for a little bit. I quite preferred the non-pixel filter look. Not that this is bad, this still looks really good, but it's just the non-pixel filter on there, I think, just looks personally the best for me. Audio and language, just a few different things there. A few different sound bars and stuff, nothing too crazy. Controls, you can do input rebinding and stuff, which is nice. Only for mouse and keyboard, though. It does no controller rebinding. Not that you really need to. I mean, there's not really a ton of stuff going on. There's not terribly complex, inputs or anything like that, so I don't think you'll really be needing to do it. This is a controller game, I would say, though. Personally, I would recommend playing with it. Steam does that thing, you play certain games, and if the developer has set the game to be oh, this is a controller game, so it did it for this. I played it with controller, and I imagine that's probably the best way to do it, but you could absolutely do it with mouse and keyboard, as you can see by the inputs. It's all there. There's controller rumble, there's camera smoothing. I didn't actually... This is one of the few games where, motion smoothing and stuff didn't really have any sort of negative impact for me on the game. Actually kept it on the whole time, so yeah, take that as you will. Camera sensitivity starts at about halfway. I would recommend maybe turning this up a little bit. It can be a smidge slow, so if you're trying to maybe peer over a corner to see was there a little way down there, you might want to turn it up, but again, that's to each their own. Good that it's there. You can clear all your save data, so you can start the game from the very beginning if you wish. However, there is a chapter select where you can go through and just start each one of the specific kind of areas at will, if you wish, which is nice. And then there's no normally, again, I talk about difficulty settings and all that sort of stuff, but there isn't really. It's not that sort of game. So, suppose I'll speak a little bit the premise. So, you're a robot who has awoken inside a facility, a place, but you're underground. This was clearly used for something at some point, maybe mining, but there's a lot of machinery, lots of rust and metal and, you know, electrics that are barely working and stuff like that, you know. Very, very cool premise. And basically you're trying to get out. Simple as that, you know. It reminds me of, I forget the name of the game, but it was basically you're basically climbing mega structures, you know. It had a very similar kind of vibe to that, but let's jump into the actual game itself so we can actually see what it's all about. Now, I have started the first level again, but I've gone a ways into it so I can skip like sort of like the opening cutscene and some of the early tutorial stuff for you. But this is sort of like the first room, like the first time the game goes, okay, now get to it. Essentially, what you'll be doing quite a bit in the game is finding batteries or like power cells or something like that, you know, to progress to the next area, to power up something that you can get moving, basically. So you'll see this a lot where you'll just enter these massive rooms, and this is a relatively small one compared to some of the ones later, and it's just got a great sense of scale to it. You know, it feels like a large room, and a lot of the time when you're like leaving or coming back, you'll get this real sense of like, wow, I really did just traverse all that. You know, it's a great feeling, and also we are a little robot. Got a nice little hat, got a nice little, I don't know what you call that, it's like a mini poncho, I guess. I don't know if there's a name for that. It's got like a little scarf, got a little backpack, and we got our staff, and the staff is a very important traversal tool in this game, because traversal is really the name of the game, that and a tiny bit of puzzle solving. So the game has a, sort of a, I don't want to call it like a parkour system, but like a mantling system and sort of like a bit of a climbing system. So you can, you know, cling onto ledges and stuff with your staff. So that's like sort of why you need that. It's very cool. I like it. It's very freeform as well. You can, like, any ledge that you think, yes, I should, like, based on the things that I have grabbed in the past, I should be able to grab that, you know. And there's multiple different ways you can do movement. So you can jump and, you know, reach out with your staff and, like, grab onto things. But you can also do a pole vault, which is very cool. Let's see if I can reach this. Yeah, there we go. So I can grab onto that. So there's a lot of freedom in the movement. Now, the game is still very tightly designed in the sense that you're going to be following a path for the most part, with a few branching exceptions, you know, to go and get, like, maybe little collectibles and stuff like that. But the way the traversal system works is it feels very freeform at all times. I really don't feel like I'm ever on rails with it, you know, whereas opposed to something like, I don't know, if I choose pluck Uncharted out of my hat, you know, the climbing and traversal parkour elements of that game are very much like, they're cool and they're fluid and they're really well visually animated and stuff, but you are for the most part just climbing a set track that they have placed for you. And like I said, there is elements of that in this game, but due to the free nature of how the climbing works and just the things you should be able to grab onto and how consistent it feels. You know, it never goes like, oh, you can't climb that ledge because that's not the way I want you to go. There just won't be that ledge. So there's a lot of freeform, like, you look at somewhere and go like, I could climb that, probably. You know, you never look at somewhere and go like, ah, well, that's somewhere I just can't climb, you know, obviously. Which I think is a very underappreciated part of game design for these sorts of things, you know, when you just notice when you're on a track. And I don't feel that way with this game, which is very, very cool. I'm always a big fan of that sort of thing. But yeah, the visual aesthetic, very, very moody, very brutal, you know, almost, well, brutalist, right? And the big blocks and the very rusted machinery and stuff like that. But also a nice little charm because our little robot is just, you know, just looks like they're having a great old time. Climbing away and exploring and getting their way through this sort of thing. It's one thing I did quite like about this game is that as much as the environment is very cold and our character's a robot, you know, there's a lot of character in actually just going through the game. It's a world that feels very dead, but at the same time not dead in the sense of character. You'll meet other robots, and it feels like everyone's just, you know, happy to help you get through this place. You know, there's no hostility here. It just is. It's a strange feeling. It's a good mood that I think this game invokes. And then the music is just, you know, very, very mood setting. Great tone to it. So this is start recollection. This is one of the sort of story things. So this game has a story in the sense that our characters find themselves in a weird place, you know. We're trying to get out. But the world, you don't really get ever told anything explicit about it other than you'll get little flashbacks and you'll get artifacts that give you kind of hints as to why you are in this place, what this place might be, what the world outside of it might have been like, or what it is like now. You know, is this a post-apocalyptic thing? I mean, these sorts of things, they're never really answered concretely, but they're always hinted at, and I think that's a great way to have done the story in a game with this kind of premise, you know. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and grab that because that is a story thing, and if you like the look of this game, I'd like to leave that for you to discover, but it's cool. I like it. So you can see, you can also do a little zoom in, but also see your battery counts. A lot of the time, like I said, you'll just be finding batteries, and then that's how you'll sort of move on. So here is said battery. Also, being a robot, if we touch the water, instant death. But it just sort of sets you back almost to exactly where you were. The checkpoint system in this game is extremely generous, which is a massive thank God, because I did have a couple of moments where, as you can imagine, with these levels getting quite large, but still needing to be traversable, there can be times when there's layers. You know, you can be on like a top layer and maybe you feel some aspect of the platforming and you fall. And you fall down like 3 layers. And you're thinking like, oh god, I'm going to have to climb the whole way back up there again. No, you can just jump off the ledge and it will generally remember the fact that you've just were up there, you know, on that top layer. And, you know, and it'll pop you back up there. So there's no need to worry about that sort of aspect of the game. It's very, very nice. So, you look around, you see lots of little things, and you're thinking like, you know, just part of the traversal, like, how could I get around this? You know, I could climb up over here, maybe that lets me jump up over on that area. And a lot of the times you're very much rewarded. It's a very rewarding for... It doesn't just show you the path, but it gives you enough tools and shows you just enough to get your brain thinking like, oh, I could probably jump over there, or I could probably do that, and then pole vault off that, and then I could get onto that, and then, you know, really, really cool. And then the sound design, like I said, you know, just even the little things like the robots, like little feet just run around the place, great sense of sound, scale, all the, you can't really hear much of them like right now, but you're hearing like, you know, water rushing noises, you know, along the cave walls, and hear some echoey noises in the large areas and stuff like that. So again, it really is just the biggest sort of strong point of this game is the traversal and the mood. Now, that's not to say that the traversal is perfect by any means. Sometimes it can be a little bit janky. I've had it a couple of times where if I jump, so I'm trying to do it now, if I jump and hold, what's X? Well, you can see right there. So jumping and holding X, that's supposed to be like you're holding out your staff to get a grip on something. I've had it sometimes where I go to do that and just the robot doesn't hold out the arm, or doesn't hold out the staff to grab onto something. And that has gotten me, you know, I have fell like several times because I presume robot is now about to go out and grab something, and then just nothing happens, and then I fall. Like I said, very good thing. This game has a very good checkpoint system, otherwise that could have been very frustrating very quickly. It makes me wonder, one of those things, it's like, you know, does such a good checkpoint system exist because of that, you know, bit of jankness in there? Or is it just a happy accident sort of thing? But it's not. It doesn't happen enough, like I said, that it's frustrating. If the checkpoint system was worse, like I said, it probably would have been. But it's not that big a deal, really, especially in a game like this. But you know, it is a flaw with the game, so I'm going to point it out. But other than that, I mean, the movement feels weighty. Like whenever he's going up on the pole vault and stuff like that, like, you know, good sense of weight, good sense of momentum. There's never really a time when I don't know if I'm going to, like, grab something. I will say it's a lot more lenient than you'll think, though. You'll learn this quick. Like, you'll find areas you're like, there's no way I could grab that. And then, you know, the game kind of has a little bit of an invisible reach just to push you along. So sometimes, I guess, like, you'll come across an area and be like, I don't know. And then you'll go for it and you'll hit it easily and you'll be like, oh, okay. So that can certainly happen. So let's pull this lever. A lot of puzzle mechanics are reliant on the fact that your character does have this staff, and sometimes you'll have to like leave it behind and do a bit of the puzzle like without it, which limits your movements. You're gonna have to maybe do things in certain orders, you know. So there's some thinking involved with the puzzle elements of the game, certainly. There's a little bit of that movement jank. It can be a bit slidey sometimes as well. Sometimes they just go into like an animation where it feels like there's certain parts of the terrain where you kind of slide down them, and sometimes it feels like the game thinks I'm in one of those terrain, or on one of those bits of terrain when I'm not. Yeah, so we freed this little robot, and they're gonna give us a battery because they're just so nice. First time I saw this robot, I thought like we're gonna see some combat or something like that maybe pop into the game. Again, I went into this like almost entirely blind, had no idea. And I was pleasantly surprised when, you know, we just helped the robot and then it gave us a little reward. It was very nice. So there's one of our other batteries. So I think I needed 4, I think, if I remember correctly. So there's one there I forgot to get. And then there's one up there. Actually went past 2 of them. So you can do stuff like that, you know, like obviously it kind of... If you look at the level and how it's laid out, it's supposed to be like I jump across there, jump across here, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I can just pole vault off there, you know. So there is a good sense of freedom in the level design and stuff, while also keeping a well-paced level design in mind. I think that's one of my favorite things. I love a game with good pacing. I think good pacing is one of the absolute hardest things you can do in video games. And it's one of my absolute favorite things to see get done properly. And this game, I think, really does nail it. Obviously, it's only, like I said, it's only a 2-hour game, so doing pacing in that sense is a lot easier than, you know, some 60-hour RPG or something like that, but it doesn't mean it's any less appreciated, you know? Every time I thought the game was like, okay, you know, you've taught me a bunch of things, you're probably going to throw me into a big room where I'm just going to do all the things I already know, and then, you know, I'll maybe start getting a little bit bored of the idea of some of the things, you know, because they're not particularly challenging, it's just, you know, I've done these things, I have already proven I know how to do these things, so you're just asking me to sort of jump through the hoops now. But no, this game is always throwing some new traversal mechanics, or like, you know, there's chains that you can jump onto and swing around on, stuff like that. It's always throwing something like that at you. So I think if we go here, we can pop all the batteries in, and I'm just going to, if it'll let me. I don't think it's going to let me skip the cutscene. But yeah, so there's a little robot companion, and because of them is the reason you're, you know, up and about. So, and both of you are kind of on this journey to get out. So I'll just skip this here because, again, I want to show you as little of the story as I possibly can, because I think it is worth experiencing. Like I said, or, you know, like you should know from the 2-hour thing, it's very short and sweet, but I think it I think it hits well. So pull the lever, and then we hop out into our sort of next big area. The game's quite fond of these sort of moments where it goes like, hey, here's your next big area that you're going to be exploring and doing lots of cool stuff in, you know. You're going to be vibing out in, enjoying the music, traversing, figuring out where to go next. And just skip past this here. Yeah, so like I said, there's the chains. You hop on them, swing about the place. Always changing it up. Always changing it up. And I very much appreciate that. But yeah. Like I said, I don't want to show too much of this game because of aforementioned reasons, but oh look, an artifact. I never actually found this one. After I'm done here, I'm going to go look at whatever that is, and I'm going to speculate and ponder on what it could mean. But yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to say about this one. It is very fun, very vibey, you know, just chill, sit back, kick the feet up, enjoy a giant mega structure-esque vibe of a place to explore. It's more caves and stuff rather than a big structure, but it kind of gives off that kind of appeal. And yeah, just enjoy it. Like I said, only 2 hours long, so I mean, you could knock this one out right and quick. Have a great time. Lots of character. You can just feel the sort of the love and desire to make just a cool game, a cool and interesting game that went into this. Very nostalgic as well, considering, you know, it's very much evocative of that early 2000s 3D platformer look, you know, because you look at the textures and it's like those are some low-res textures and stuff like that, but it's, you know, that's how it was back then, and that's the style this game's going for, and I think it absolutely nails it. It really reminds me of or certain areas of a game called Metal Arms, a glitch in the system on the PS2. There's certain areas of that game and certain areas of this game that sort of really make me think of each other there. And I personally, I am a big fan of this sort of visual look because it's just so... It's so evocative, it's so moody, it's so atmospheric, but most importantly to me, it is just so clean, you know? Everything is so distinct in what it is. And that's one thing that, about modern gaming that I think it really loses when they try to just make everything look as realistic as possible. There can be a lot of, like, a big mess on the screen, visually. At least in my opinion, you know. I think things don't, you know, they don't stand out. They're not trying to be... what's the word? Do I want to just use the word art, I guess? Like, you know, like, every little bit of it isn't trying to be art. Some of it's just trying to be the best, most realistic looking thing ever, and maybe that doesn't cohere with like the rest of the game's visual design, because all it's trying to do in certain places is just make that part look as good as possible and not look as if it fits in as much as possible. That's, you know, this is one of those sort of topics that I've sort of surface thought about every now and again as I've played some modern games, so I'd have to really dig in more into how I feel about that sort of thing, but hopefully you get what I mean whenever I say that. But yeah, I think this game is worth it. I think you should play it. Especially if you played those early 2000s 3D platformers, you like the look of the game, the movement sort of appeals to you, the vibe is catching you. The only thing I'd really say is if you're one of those people that does it by like, oh, this game is £10 or $10, so I should get 10 hours out of it. Like, you're just not going to get that sort of thing here. I personally don't think you should be using that system to judge games. I just don't think that's how this sort of thing should work. But, you know, who am I to tell people, like, what system they should value their time and money on, you know? You do you in that regard. But yeah, I'd very much recommend this one. You can pick it up on Steam for £8.50 or I believe $10.50. It's currently on a sale right now as well, as of the time of this video, which runs for another 20 or so hours. So, just under another day. Where it's a little bit cheaper. I believe it was about £6 something. So, if you do like it, be sure to pick it up quick, because you'll get it a little bit cheaper. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I shall see you on the next one. Goodbye.